I've been thinking about this episode for the longest time, and the fact that some of my followers described it as one of the worst episodes, despite the fact that other episodes may be worse than this, but this episode is really a difficult episode to talk about. Mainly the fact that it had the debut of a character that we've somewhat grew to like, but for me personally, this episode really showcases of how much that a character that improves really didn't have humble beginnings, because Charlie's definitely one of those people. The premise is that Grizz is willing to do a bed and breakfast thing where he allows someone on the internet to come inside their house in order to get paid. And this is where we get the introduction of Charlie, and truth be told, I took a lot of time to rethink about this episode before finally reviewing it. And truth be told, this isn't the worst Charlie episode. There is another episode that is worse than this involving Charlie, but that doesn't mean that this episode is any good. Charlie is a chatterbox. He doesn't stop when he needs to. He makes noise that really made the bears stay up all night. And the fact that whenever he asks a question towards the bears, he doesn't give them a chance to answer his questions. And truth be told, I really feel like that the way they're executing him in this episode is supposed to be an indicator that he is the way he is, but at the same time, with the idea that I'm gonna be getting to later involving why he's living in the forest, it doesn't excuse of how much annoyance he brings throughout this episode. Compared to the introductions of Chloe, Lucy, Ranger Tapes, and even Num Num, the very least I can give them is that they have an introduction where they were not annoying. And when they do something, it's mainly on how they're developed as a character. And I would say the same thing to Charlie, but at the same time, no matter what he's doing with when it comes to his life, it doesn't really excuse of how much of a broken house that he is towards the bears. There are so many people who are looking after Charlie since that he is a whale creature. But my biggest question is that why isn't this brought up? Like, the people searching for him, and it never gets brought up again. I mean, granted, Ranger Tapes did look after Charlie in order to capture him, but that's a different topic, because when it comes to the many people that we've seen in this episode searching after Charlie, why wasn't this continued? I just don't understand that. And even though that the bears covered up Charlie in order to keep him around, it doesn't really change the fact that they don't want him in their house. And this also kickstarts the shipping between Panda and Charlie, which I did talk about the pair in the art episode 5 years ago, but at the same time, looking back at this episode, well, they see Charlie as Panda's girlfriend. Truth be told, just because of what Panda went through when it comes to his social interactions towards girls, doesn't really excuse the fact that he really deserves any of this. Granted, this whole thing has never been brought up afterwards, but this show isn't even convincing me that Panda and Charlie being together would even work out if this show is really taking the route of Panda never having a girlfriend due to his social status. There are multiple reasons onto why I'm never against the whole simping aspect when it comes to cartoon characters, and with Panda being one of them. Honestly, for how Panda talks to Charlie in this episode, he's not being selfish. And truth be told, the whole Grizz bringing up the bed and breakfast thing to, well, they need the guest to have Panda's bed is still out of nowhere to the point that Panda just isn't on board with. And the fact that Grizz has been doing that multiple times, honestly, expect the unexpected is not something that Panda has in his system, and that's not something I can go against his character. I can go against Grizz's character for that. And the truth of all this is, Charlie's feel towards humans, honestly, it's better executed in later episodes, because if you don't look at this episode, honestly, you can figure out onto why he's in the position on not interacting with other humans like Panda, Grizz, and Ice Bear would. And I can guarantee you that I really wanted to see him interact with other characters like Chloe, Lucy, and even Num Num, but judging of how that he's executed in a way where it's difficult to feel sympathy after everything that he put through the Bears on being a terrible house guest, it's difficult to side with him, mainly the fact that even if he doesn't deserve to get the attention from the humans, it makes his justification to go to the Bears Cave even less meaningful, because if he just reacted in a way where he wants to get away from other humans in order to go to the Bears Cave temporarily, then that's understandable. And truth be told, him slapping the cameras from Grizz and Panda is also justifiable, but at the same time, still doesn't excuse everything in this episode. Mainly the issues, well, if you try to overlook it, you can't be able to ignore on the fact that Charlie, at the end of the day, is still a bad house guest. And when it comes to the ending where the Bears lock the door, if this was the only episode where Charlie ever appears in, then this episode would have been remembered as an episode that would have been a lot more worse than what it is now. To give the future Charlie episodes credit, it made this episode less worse. Granted, that's not saying much, but when I say less worse, I meant it aged less worse over time, while it's not as worse as it was upon watching it for the first time. For the debut episode involving Charlie, it's one of the worst introductions I've seen from any other cartoon, and even though that the other Charlie episode that we're going to be tackling later on in this marathon is worse than this, that doesn't mean that this episode is considered good to sit through, because if you just ignore this episode and just look at the other Charlie episodes, you wouldn't miss anything, because regardless if this is the introduction of Charlie, it's still a bad introduction. I'm giving this episode a 4 out of 10.